It's time to talk about heroism and what I think it is. This may sound strange, but to me, a hero is a man who will not accept the status quo if it does not meet his standards. For an instant, or for an hour, or for a month, or in the case of prisoners, maybe longer, he'll stand up and turn his world around. It's not right, in quotations, it's not right that the ticking hand grenade should kill everybody in this foxhole. I'm going to fall on it. It's not right that this company of Marines surrounded on this mountaintop by the Chosin Reservoir should wither and freeze and surrender. We're going to break out of here. It's not right that I should bring harm to my fellow prisoners by letting myself be forced to inform on them. I'm going to break a window and cut myself up. So that's a brief description of what Jim Stockdale thinks heroism is. Again, a hero is a man who will not accept the status quo if it does not meet his standards. I gotta let my dog in one side. Little fucker. Here you prick. Okay, we're back at it. This is gonna be a quick podcast. I'm wrapping up Thoughts of a Philosophical Fighter Pilot, and I wanted to touch on that idea of heroism because today I wasn't going to go into this, but today we label, it's almost like we label the strange heroes. Bruce Jenner won Hero of the Year award or something like that within sports, and there were first of all there was the Invictus Games, which was I think it was with the UK and America, basically warriors who'd been injured in battle competing against one another. There were multiple amputated athletes that were competing. There were real heroes that had faced. There was even, what's this girl I saw? She's a boxing champion. I think she'd been raped when she was younger. Now she's going for her second gold medal. The amount of people facing cancer, playing college basketball, I forget what that. I think that girl's name was Lauryn Hill. I might be wrong, but the amount of people who so the girl who had cancer and was playing college basketball, the status quo would be to feel sorry for myself, to almost give up, throw in the towel. She went on living life, inspiring others. She saw the status quo, and it wasn't in line with her standards, so she went against them. And then we award a hero award to someone who has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars changing the way they look. It's just fucked. Anyway, our idea of heroism is not in line with our society's idea of heroism is not in line with Mr. Stockdale's. And I think him being a Medal of Honor winner, I think he has a better idea of what a hero really is. And using him as an example, it was kind of that last sentence that kind of summed up what he was going through. Where is it? It's not right that I should bring harm to my fellow prisoners by letting myself be forced to inform on them. I'm going to break a window and cut myself up. So rather than inform on his fellow prisoners, what they had from this book, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but they had within the prison they had a hierarchy between the prisoners, and it wasn't based on necessarily military rank. It was based on who was a leader and who wasn't. So the leaders would basically give the other prisoners guidance on what they can do and what they can't do, or when they can say something, like how much they have to go through before they can give the names away, or before they can do this, before they can do that. There had to be some kind of guide to help these guys deal with the torture, both mental and physical. And so the leaders would help these other guys do that, and Jim Stockdale was one of them. So rather than, it says the quote, rather than inform on my brothers, basically, I'm gonna break a window and cut myself up. It's interesting that, so the status quo is we have to go along with this. Even earlier on in the book, I talked about it last week. He was thankful that he didn't have contact with his government, because his government wouldn't understand these barriers they set for themselves, or these marks that they set for themselves. Okay, you could do this once you've reached this point, once they've tortured you this long, once they've done this, once they've done that. I think he spent 2 or 4 years in solitary confinement as well. That's insane. So then, heroism in our own lives. First of all, a hero can be made in a second, or it can be made over a lifetime. It depends on the actions of the man and or woman and what they're facing. So someone can go through their whole life, be a piece of shit, but for some reason, in a moment, a grenade's thrown out there. They jump on it, bear the brunt of the blow, and save their comrades around them. That's an instant that makes a hero. In our own lives, we have to think about what our standards are. I think standards for guys, since this is called Man Up, I think standards for guys have to include justice and honor. Justice, I will fight even though it isn't necessarily popular. That goes against the grain of our politicians today, where they will only do what's popular, or what they perceive as popular, rather than standing against wrong and for right. But as a man, you have to have a clear idea of right and wrong. That comes from a lot of reading. It comes from a lot of living. You got to go outside your comfort zone. You got to really explore the world, your community, nature, whatever. You have to have a clear sense of right and wrong, but then you have to have the balls to be able to stand for right against wrong, even if it's an unpopular opinion. So, what's an example? Example in my own life is, I think abortion's an evil, very evil thing. Science shows that there's life upon conception. Whatever. End of the day, if you if you believe in abortion or the woman's right to choose, you think that you essentially think that it's the woman's right to kill a baby. Forget the fact that they got pregnant. Forget the fact that a guy made them pregnant. So bring that guy. He's just as responsible. It's not just the woman. But I think it's a very evil thing. So I don't know. Maybe it's where I live. But you get a lot of people who they almost think abortion's a right or a good thing. Oh, it's completely fucked up. But the amount of dates I've been on or people I've met where somehow that comes up in conversation, and I gotta stop it right there. Like, my values dictate that I can't be in line with that. That's as bad as it gets in my mind. And even though she might be a babe or whatever, it just doesn't fit my standards. And I'm not saying, like, no holier than thou going on here. I'm not saying that, but that's one instance. There's tons of other instances where I've completely fucking ignored my standards because of whatever. Who knows what I was... You know what I mean. But for that instant, in that moment, it's not a heroic thing by any means, obviously, but in that moment, the standard was one way. What seems to be the growing status quo is another way, and I couldn't go in line with that. In your own life, you have an idea of what right and wrong is, and no matter if it means more money, no matter if it means more women, no matter if it means whatever, if it's out of line with your standards, if it's out of line with your idea of justice, you can't go along with it. Second is honor, and that goes more toward money. There's a lot we can do in this life, and there's a lot of people who do anything in this life to earn a dollar, but they won't do it with honor. It's the few. It makes you think about what heroism is outside of the battlefield, and it's almost the guy who raises his family, works his ass off, provides for them, but doesn't compromise. He doesn't go out of line or shift who he is just to make a buck, just to be more popular, just for whatever. He stays true to who he is. And sometimes they take a lot of flack from kids. I remember being a little fucking prick when I was a kid and wanting my parents to make more money and saying some things like that. It's really stupid shit. And as I'm older now, I really see both of my parents. I really see how they had defined their standards and they had the courage to stick to them. I think that's heroism on a grander scale, and it won't be recognized by media, won't be recognized by TV. They won't get money, they won't get fame. They might get a thank you and a hug from their kid. They might not. Their kid might not even recognize. He might be a piece of shit, and you might just brush it off as them being stubborn, old, and archaic in their way of thinking. But that is heroism over the long haul. On a smaller scale, so on a day-to-day scale, this isn't heroism, but this is you being in line with your standards. This is your rules. This is your 12, 10, 12, 13, whatever rules you have. The wake-up time, the discipline that you want to do, the writing time, the frugality, not buying stupid shit. The movie? The Fight Club. We buy things to impress people. We buy whatever. We work to buy things to impress people that we don't like, or something like that. Well, that was the quote. That's essentially what we do. That should be out of line with your standards. You should not buy something. You should not desire something. You should not look at what someone else has, look at what you have, and then want to live up to what they have. That is not in the realm of an honorable or a healthy way of thinking. And to do that should be out of line with your standards. So the task, again, this is going to be a quick podcast. I actually wrote a little bit more. But it started with heroism. Jim Stockdale defining what a hero is. A man who will go against the status quo if it doesn't fit his standards. So that can be the grenade, the Marine falling on the grenade. It can be the dad sticking to his guns, not compromising who he is just for $1. That can be the prisoner of war not selling secrets and instead harming himself. Socrates killed himself because he wouldn't allow, because he wouldn't allow someone else to take that from him. He had everything. He did what he could in the moment. He controlled what he could. And in that moment, when he was about to die, the only thing he could control was whether he took his life or someone else did. So there's the status quo, there's your standards, and if the status quo goes against your standards, no matter how big it is or how small it is, you have to stay in line with your standards if you're going to live a flourishing, effective, productive life. You can easily live a wealthy life if you live outside your standards. You can easily get lots of women if you live outside your standards. But there is such thing as sleeping with yourself. There is such thing as being able to hold your head high when you walk down the street. And there's more to life than boobs and money, and living in line with your standards is a big part of that. We're not all going to be heroes, but from his definition of heroism, there are ways in which we can live a heroic life every day of our lives. So again, check out this book. I've pumped it a lot on this podcast in the last little bit. It's a really good book. And think about how you're compromising your standards to fall in line with the masses, to fall in line with how things are supposed to go. And think, should you follow that route, or should you shift? Should you think a little different? Should you go along with your standards versus society standards, or your captor's standards, or your boss's standards, or whatever? So just something to think about. Identify your standards, and that's it for today. Again, I've got a newsletter list just for the podcast, guys, so sign up to that. If you're watching this on video, there's a link below. I'll put a link on the site as well. Again, the site that these are on, all the podcasts are on, is averagetoalpha.com, and you go click podcasts, and it'll be there. So have an awesome day, and identify your standards and stick to them as best you can. Take care.